All right, tonight's presentation is the true meaning of root cause and root cause analysis. It's presented by Dr. Jing, Senior Quality Manager of Onto Innovation. Dr. Jing is a Master Black Belt and Lean Six Sigma deployment leader, currently Senior Quality Manager at Onto Innovation. He has worked as a Continuous Improvement Director at CommScope in Shakopee, Minnesota. He was on the U.S. delegation to ISO Technical Committee 176 and participated in the development of ISO 9000-2015 as the secretary. He earned a doctorate in industrial engineering from the University of Cincinnati. A fellow of ASQ, Jing is an ASQ certified quality engineer and quality manager. And in lieu of going over what he's going to talk about this evening, I will go ahead and give the floor to Dr. Jing, where he will actually begin his presentation. All right, Dr. Jing, I give the floor to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Let me share my screen and so that I can share sound. I want to make sure this is done correctly. Okay. So really appreciate the opportunity. Hopefully you can see the screen.
Not yet.
Not yet, huh? Okay. Let me do it again.
Oh, I'll stop my share. There we go. Okay. Now we can see it.
Oh, you can see it? Okay.
Yes.
I don't need it. Okay, wonderful. So with that, I will go ahead. I really appreciate the opportunity. And I noticed quite a lot of folks here are in like continuous improvement Lean Six Sigma. So I may be preaching the choir, but I will try to make the time, well spent, worth the time. Okay, so the topic, I intentionally picked this one. I just want to address why this topic. Hopefully, you notice I've been investing in this area for quite a while, like 20 years. And one thing I notice is this question have always been coming up. Basically, at work or even other environment, people you will frequently hear, if not daily, at least like weekly or so. Have you found the root cause yet? Or if this is the right root cause. And if I talk about the history, like why I kind of start to digging in this area, it's back to about like 20 years ago. At the time when I teach those Lean Six Sigma classes, one thing I notice is people struggle the most is to decide like where to stop. When they dig in the root cause, they struggle the most is about like kind of don't know where to stop to claim root cause. That's one thing. Another thing is I used to be the program chair for Minnesota section quite some years ago. We did survey on what topic people want to hear. Root cause analysis topped the chart, basically. So there are various kind of reasons that make me digging into it for many years. So I do have a day-long workshop that address more complete kind of things, including the techniques for root cause analysis. But today's discussion focus on the first two. The first is the true meaning of root cause, and then following by what's the point of doing root cause analysis? Because those are the fundamental things, and then that decide the direction that you go in the following actions. Okay, so a little bit more background of myself and my like work history, basically in this area for 20 years, and quite a lot of involvement in both ASQ and in general Lean Six Sigma field. And I feel extremely honored to be blessed by Jack Welch for my program, basically. Okay, so just a little bit background. Then back to the business. How many people, hopefully people have seen this? Kind of, do you know where it's from? I don't know if it's true, but that's where I got the quote. So basically, we're going to do just that, the definition of the root cause. And for this purpose, I like the discussion to be dynamic because I want folks to feel the definition may be at the tip of the tongue of many people, but to put together a good description acceptable by others or many others, it may not be so straightforward. So I'm hoping some folks can volunteer to jump in to say, like, how do you want to describe root cause? I mean, the reason I want to do that is I want people to get a feel. It's not so straightforward to describe it. And especially if you want to describe in a more complete fashion. What I notice is usually the description is not wrong. It's just maybe not as complete as we hoped, or it can be, and miss one of the key ingredients or component I'm looking for. So hopefully somebody can join, jump in to share your thought. Use your own, just unmute. That's one way, or if you want to type, but type takes too much time. Hopefully we get one or two folks to weigh in. Again, there will be no wrong definition or statement, just matter of how widely it can be accepted by others.
What caused the issue?
Thank you very much, Glenn, for jumping in. Can somebody else also give it a try? I want to give a couple of that, right? So we will see different people, they describe in slightly different way. They are all somewhat similar. In the same time, I'm looking for a key component. I'm trying to. Thanks.
Oh, we had someone weigh in on the chat that said lowest level at which we have control.
Thank you very much, Duke. Someone else? Anyone?
Yeah.
Let's give it a 3.
The main reason we had the problem, the fundamental reason for which we had the problem.
Wonderful. Really appreciate everyone for jumping in. Glenn, Arimish, and also, there are more, right?
Yes.
Joseph, also our regional cause. Okay, wonderful. They are all very good, all pretty good. It's again, usually there's no wrong answer, just matter of like two things. One is you see different people describe it in a slightly different way. Another thing is I'm looking for a key component. In many cases, people forget to hit. So let's see some of the definitions online or in the public domain. This is when I put together this presentation, this is what I got on Wikipedia. To me, actually, this is a relatively better one. It highlighted like the initial cause and also highlighted lack of the widely accepted definition. So this is one of them in the early years. Another one in the current year, like Collins dictionary, fundamental reasons. I mean, they're all pretty good. And fundamental, maybe we need a little bit of clarification on what is referring to. If you keep going, this is the current version on Wikipedia. Shorter, more direct cause. That's what's using. Or if we're looking at ASQ, this is saying the highest, that's equivalent to what Joseph is saying, the lowest, highest, lowest. They're all referring to similar things, right? The cost, basically. And thanks, Steve. I really appreciate you weigh in the chat as well. The point in the chain of event, which if you eliminate would prevent the rest of the sequence from occurring. Yeah, so they're all pretty good. And if you compare between the two slides, I personally feel like this second slide is less satisfying. And I will explain why that none of those satisfied my expectation, basically, or perspective. Now, let's look into that. So that's a sort of a headline per se I always refer to. Have you found the root cause yet? Because that's for 20 years, it never ended. People always bring up those discussions. And one thing I noticed when I dig into this matter, I noticed there are tons of publications or training classes to teach people how to do root cause analysis. In the same time, I noticed that hardly any of them really dig into or explore the true meaning of cause. So to me, it's something awkward. I mean, I know some of the folks on the call today, they actually read books on those, so they definitely have good understanding on this. It's just in the same time, I noticed those phenomena. Most of the time, people don't talk about what's the meaning of root cause. So in your mind, when you're visioning root cause, are you visioning it's like something fixed, just being buried by something else? And the task of root cause analysis is to go find this buried item. So that's one of the scenario, right? I mean, you can either use voice unmute or put in the chat to say if there's something you're visioning. In this case, there is something fixed. The key is something fixed. You just didn't see. And in that case, the whole task of root cause analysis is to reveal, to find that particular thing that's currently covered by others. That's one thing. Maybe think about a little more. Compare two more scenarios. That's the point I'm trying to drive into right after this. I'm giving you two scenarios to think about. One scenario is, if the rule is the oldest prince, Herod the king, be the next king. So that could be one scenario. Or another scenario is, the next king could be any of the prince, any of the children, any of the child. Between the two, if this kind of the person is what we're looking for the root cause, like which one is closer? What I'm trying to kind of highlight in a way is the first scenario, the oldest prince is entitled to the king. If the rule is go by the oldest. In the second scenario, if anyone can be the next king, in this case, the next king, that person isn't entitled to. It's kind of you picked from among many. So that's the thing I'm trying to highlight. The nature, in a way, of the root cause. So what I'm trying to highlight is, this is what I noticed, that there's no real or true absolute root cause. The so-called root cause is something really being picked subjectively by people to serve that role. In a way, it's a moving target you pick from many possible ones, instead of there is one, really the true root cause. So that's the message or the thing I try to highlight. I notice most of the definition don't hit that. I don't know if people agree or disagree, or they just didn't pay attention to that piece. What I'm trying to highlight again is the root cause in nature is being chosen to be that role. It's not born into as the root cause. It's not an entitlement thing. That's what I'm trying to highlight. If you agree with this, then the whole nature, why do we care about that? It's because that drive the nature of root cause analysis to a different direction or different flavor. Essentially, the perspective of root cause analysis, it will change if you pay attention to this piece. Okay, so some example. So this is kind of I just cited from some of the book, right? But it's quite straightforward. A classic 5-1. Do you agree poor maintenance, even though now is kind of ended of the 5-Y, supposed to be the root cause? Is poor maintenance really the root cause? Or there could be something after that. again, let's make this more dynamic, right? Feel free to unmute and to voice your thought, and just to cut me off. If you really have things you would like to share, or if you want to challenge some of my, thought or whatever the flow, feel free just to stop and unmute, and that's the style I like, right? And feel free to weigh in.
Yeah, it's possible, that even beyond 5 whys, there could be real other root causes where the floor may itself was very slippery anyways to begin with. So it really didn't matter how good you do maintenance, it would create a condition of potential for fall.
Really appreciate it, Amrish. I mean, other folks, feel free to do the same, right? Please, I will highly appreciate if you do the same, just to jump in anytime, unmute. Okay,
So,
really appreciate Amrish, right? Okay,
but
go ahead, Glenn.
in some of these cases, though, is the 5 whys the right tool? Remember, we've got a toolbox. Let's pull out of the toolbox the right tool. Should it be more along the lines of an Ishikawa diagram? There's
Yep.
a number of different tools in there.
Sure,
to
yeah.
root cause.
That's a different thing, right? Yeah, that's kind of the tool and the direction. I mean, by the way, today's topic, we're not focusing on that, even though my whole kind of thing later on will show it will address that, but it's not within today's segment. It'll be the after the segment after that. So here, I really appreciate Glenn, you jump in as well. So this is what I try to highlight. The causation, if you look into it, it's an infinite chain of causation. You can keep drilling down until you say that God made it so. Otherwise, you can always find something before that or causing that. So this is what I try to highlight. It's the concept of infinite chain of causation. And some of the things worth noting, one item, any item, it'll be both a cause and an effect at the same time. It's the cause of its next step. It's the effect of its previous step. But in nature, you can always find something leading to it, unless you say the God made it the way. So that's one thing. And I actually have a very good clip later on. I don't know time-wise if it's worth to look, but anyway. So this concept I'm trying to highlight, it may not be widely noticed or recognized in the engineering world, but in the philosophical world, it's very popular, very common. So some of those citations. Another thing, this is a side thing, probably not worth spending a lot of time, but okay. I saw some folks pasted something. Thanks, Bob. Okay, so you probably got it even online or somewhere, right? So there are various definitions we can find. Yeah. So a side note is maybe a chain of causation is too simplified. This is what Glenn was alluding to, and some folks they debate with me through publications. So they try to critique to say maybe if I stick to the chain of causation, it's too simply oversimplifying the reality. That's why I added 2 slides over here just to respond to make sure we're covering all of the needed consideration. The reality may be more of a network instead of a single chain. But to simplify the discussion, the remaining discussion, we will stay in the chain of causation, even though that can be applied to those network scenario as well, but in a more complicated way. Okay, so with that, thanks, Bob, for sharing. I mean, do you want to voice if that's the you searched online or you got it? Okay, and also thanks, Gloria, commented in the chat as well. To compare between 5Y and Ishikawa. So as I mentioned, I do have the next section to talk about those, but it's outside today's kind of scope because of the time. Okay, so with that in mind, I think we wrapped up the first thing I want to hit, the true meaning of root cause. With that, we can move to the next topic, subtopic. It's the root cause analysis. That is, what's the point of doing root cause analysis? The reason I want to do this in sequence is because with whatever I highlighted, people's perspective in root cause analysis will change a little bit, or will maybe slightly different somewhat. Okay, so there's another cited like model per se, cause-effect relationship. So in general, to say you have a problem, and usually there's a cause and there's an effect, and your actions can try to address both cause and effect as well. And in the same time, we are told the general rule of thumb is we should shift attention to the cause side instead of the problem itself. So the question here I have, I mean, just to inspire thinking and discussion, right? Why? What's the thought? What's the reason to do that? And by clarifying a little bit, we can reveal the next problem or a big matter as well.
The problem of is a symptom versus cause is the contributor for that.
Yep. Some of the definition, thanks again, Amarish, many of the definitions, and even including what Bob posted over there, already in a way like answer this, right? So basically, to address cause, it will affect more things, like affect more consequence or downstream. And because of this, it's kind of, in a way, it's the reason to do that. Okay, so I'm thinking about the, maybe I will go ahead and show this, just kind of the
Papa, can we go outside?
No,
Why?
because it's 5 o'clock in the morning. It's too early.
Why?
The sun hasn't come up yet.
Why?
Because the sun comes up later.
Why?
Well, the Earth goes around, and when it turns a certain amount, the sun shows on the horizon.
Why?
I don't know.
Anyway, you get the point, right? And let's see the record. So probably people.
That's why you're lucky. Now we're lucky.
Why?
It's just the way it goes.
Why?
This guy's dead. We're alone.
You see, this is the classic thing about like the 5Y. It's like 2 years old. In the kind of the nature, in a way, one of the nature of the thought, right? Anything you spit out, they can always ask why, until, okay, for no reason. I mean, I want to stop, then we can stop. Or he probably also mentioned something similar, like the God made it so, basically. Anyway, so one thing I'm trying to highlight using this is to say why everyone is kind of driving people to look at the cost side and keep digging like 5Y or so. Because the impact is higher if you go to the deeper level of cost. Then the next problem I'm trying to mention or highlight is, in many cases, people don't touch on in this area, but that change people's behavior. That is this. It's true, if you keep going deeper, your impact is higher. In the same time, the cost of doing this will also increase, always increase. So then people get into that dilemma, and that's why we just always struggle with that, where to stop. My cost is keeping going, and where is the satisfying stop? So on that, let's use this Jefferson Memorial as a kind of the many people are familiar with this, but looking at this story from a slightly different angle for 3 questions, essentially. Think about the 3 questions. The first, if the solution they choose, basically the root cause, did they hit the root cause yet? That's the first question. Did they find the root cause? Second question, is this the only solution or possible root cause for whatever they choose? And the third question is, if that's a good solution. So I know many people are familiar with this story, but let's take a quick look and then
Years ago, the stone exterior
from
was
that
deteriorating
question
at the
perspective.
Jefferson Memorial in Washington, D.C., a popular monument in the United States. Repairing the stone or painting over the worn areas was too expensive. So park rangers turned to root cause analysis and started asking why.
Why was the stone deteriorating?
High-powered sprayers were being used to wash the memorial every 2 weeks
Why were high-powered washings needed every 2 weeks?
because of bird droppings.
Asking why stopped because it seemed the cause was found. Workers put nets around the building, but they were unsightly, and the birds found ways around them. So it was back to the drawing board, or the 5 whys.
Why are there so many birds?
They come to feed on spiders.
Why are there so many spiders?
They feed on insects at night.
Why are there so many insects?
They're attracted by lights that shine on the memorial at night.
With a new cause found, questions stopped, and a plan was created to reduce the amount of time the memorial spent in the spotlight at night, and it worked. The insects were reduced by 90%, and with the root cause removed, the excessive cleaning was no longer needed. An unexpected benefit was a cost savings realized by using less electricity. This highlights how root cause analysis can involve trial and error.
Okay, yeah, we probably can stop here. This is just to highlight this story, right? So let's do a little bit more discussion again. To answer that 3 question, right? I mean, even though the story we're familiar with, but look at from this angle. If they found root cause, if the thing they decided, if that is the true root cause, somebody feel free to weigh in, or everyone, right? I mean, just unmute and jump in. Do you think they found the true root cause?
No.
Thank you very much. I will agree. The next question, is this the only cause or the only root cause or the only solution they can have? Is this the only solution or the only quote unquote root cause they can have?
No.
Thanks. Third question, if this is a good one, if the solution is a good solution.
Again, we can't say for sure because they stopped at that solution because they were happy with it.
Yep. In the same time, I mean, by the way, because it's one of the story I use, there are like 2 major things I invest quite a lot of time. And a side note, like I used to be, as I mentioned, I used to be on that ISO 9000 committee. We have annual meeting in DC. So for many years, I stopped by this place because I'm trying to have better exposure and understanding to the story. I talked to those park rangers for this memorial to ask for this, confirm about this story. I can never get a confirmation from any of them. Maybe only once or twice that some of the visitors, like photographer, they are taking pictures. So they kind of saying, seems like they heard about that. So what I'm saying is, this is in a way like massage the story. The real thing is more complicated than this, right? But it doesn't affect our discussion over here and discussion thing. If we look into the chain of that 5 why, we probably should agree that the solution they pick is a good one because, and that's what I'm leading to, it is a good one. It's because it's a low cost and a high return. And basically, they pushed out the lighting by an hour. So it doesn't really cost much, but it reduced the problem by they estimated like 95%. And so compared to some other options, like what other options we can have? It's again, some folks feel free to weigh in. Don't only let like myself talk or other feel free to weigh in. There are definitely other solutions, and different people looking at the same thing, they will look at from slightly different angle. For example, if it's you're like a college professor, and you're studying those like bio thing, right? Insect things. You may be more interested in why like this area have those insects like more than other areas. maybe the solution they like to have is to do, even go further, do some genome, mutation to change so that those insects are no longer attracted over here and stuff. So definitely there are other options, but those are much more complicated choices and solutions. For example, if you are like a politician, like in that area, maybe, people are saying the typical way they do is they will form a committee and allocate 50 million to do a study about that. So there will be various ways that people deal with this. And compared to some other choices, I personally do agree the chosen solution is a good one. And the key of that is this. It's the return on investment, ROI. So that's what I'm trying to hit. And it's a one big thing I noticed. It applied to both root cause analysis and FMEA. That is, none of those in the traditional approach, root cause analysis or FMEA, none of those have consideration of cost of people's action. So cost isn't in the formula. But in the same time, for anyone doing the business, return on investment or cost will always be in mind. And so in many cases, it's always there, maybe some cautiously, people didn't notice. But you'll always have to evaluate the cost. And so that drives kind of the direction or the nature of the root cause analysis in my mind. So to me, root cause analysis is really about this, return on investment. You see, many princes, they can serve as the next king. Who will be the one to choose? Whoever bring me this, essentially. Return on investment. It's not like they are born to be the king. It's because I choose him because he give me this reward. So that's my perspective in root cause analysis. And feel free to jump in to a debate or argue or whatever, share your thought. Yeah, I do see folks are posting on the chat as well. So just a little bit more elaboration on this kind of return on investment and so forth, right? In the same time, feel free to cut me off to jump into that discussion. So anyway, if we keep going in that direction, to me, root cause analysis is to look for something that gives us the best return. And the trick is to look for something that costs low compared to other choices, other options. But in the same time, there is a big challenge of this. That is, the solution cost or the cost itself in general will have minimum two components. One is the research cost. Another is the implementation cost. No matter what you do, as long as you keep digging in, the research cost will always increase, go higher. So the point is really what people are looking for is they're trying to find something, the implementation cost is much, much lower, and that will balance out and make the overall solution cost lower. So essentially, that's one of the things. And what I notice is if those are something in sight that people sense they can get, they will keep digging. If they feel it's not very realistic or they're not likely to get much lower cost, they tend to stop the digging. Basically, when we look for root cause. So in that direction, a lot more can be elaborated. For example, the ROI assessment itself, it can have many different aspects. For example, it can be short-term oriented, long-term oriented, internally oriented, externally oriented, or so forth. And so one thing I notice is because it's always there subconsciously in most of the cases, if you make it a cautious decision to really do the analysis or the calculation on the table, bring everyone to the same page, it will make the discussion or the argument a lot more straightforward. We have something more objective we can base on to decide if the choice is the right choice. That's kind of the direction. And I personally like to go. Essentially, make the ROI assessment or calculation more explicit in a cautious way. And on other things like, the calculation can change over time. So I mean, a solution today may not be good. It may be good tomorrow or vice versa. And also part of that is kind of what lead to the short-term decision versus long-term decision. Okay, so I probably should stop here just to allow people to weigh in for, in case any argument, any comments or anything, or discussions. Then we move to the next. Okay, if no, we will move to the next. So with the discussion we have here, to me, the perspective for root cause analysis will change its flavor. Essentially, what we're trying to do is we're looking for a leverage point as a root cause that give us high ROI. Essentially, the root cause analysis is looking for the leverage point that give you ROI return. And over here, I'm providing mentioning three things. It can help us to get that. One is everyone knows about the Pareto principle, right? 80-20 rule, essentially. So if you focus on those, you get better leverage. And other two will be, people may pay less attention if we don't, mention this. Another is desirability matrix. It can help. If we do it in an explicit way, it can help us to locate the leverage point. Another is the sphere of influence, span of control. So we will have a little bit more discussion on that. So the first, desirability matrix. Essentially, this is referring to, there may be different ways people call that, but essentially this is referring to, we have two dimensions to consider. One is the cost. Another is the return, is the reward. It's again, I mentioned earlier, right? I noticed just a major fallacy, I feel like, or fault that we have in the traditional root cause analysis and FMEA. That is, almost all of the attention focus on the return side for action. And essentially, people choose to ignore the cost. But in business or in reality, you can never do that. Okay, so with that, I'm trying to monitor the chat side as well. Thanks, Duke, for commenting on the chat. Okay, so if we're continuing, as you can see, this is the direction that give us higher desirability for low cost and high return side. Essentially, that's what the desirability matrix is about. And in the same time, we have this dilemma that the traditional way of doing those analysis ignored one dimension, one of the two dimensions. So it makes the decision a little bit wobble. I mean, at least to me. I mean, in a way, not as reliable. I mean, since you are ignoring a whole dimension that we need to think about. It's again, feel free to weigh in, anyone, right, on this. I know everyone have a lot to say. I mean, on this. Okay, so if no more, we will take a look at the next kind of thing, that is the span of control, sphere of influence. This, in general, can help us identify the high leverage point as well. So essentially, if things are within our span of control, we get the highest leverage. And then sphere of influence, we get some, and outside that, there's no leverage. The implication is, if the identified root cause it's over here, we probably should choose to ignore. Or unless you have a way, you can find a way to push the envelope, to expand your sphere of influence. So at least know in the current setting, they don't help you essentially if they fall outside. Anyone want to comment?
You learn to work through others that have that
Yep.
control to
Yep.
increase that control. Then there's
Sure.
always bribery or blackmail.
Sure, yeah. So one thing is you don't stop in the current setting. If you notice the potential root cause is outside, and you want to expand the circle, basically, right? Yeah, thanks, Glenn, for highlighting that. So at least if we look at it in this way, it will help us to figure out or get a better sense on the leverage point, how much leverage we can. Really appreciate weighing. Okay, so a little bit kind of more comment about this, like sphere or this boundary side, because we're talking about the boundary, right? And one thing is worth also mention is it's kind of the sword have two edges. In one way it'll help us, another way it may confine us. And the way it can help us is if you know you have a scope that you have influence, and then you stay within that scope, you get better return. And the other side is it may negatively limit your potential, because like what Glenn commented, you can choose to expand your boundary, and then the calculation will change, basically. So anyway, so just kind of a side note on that. Okay, so with all of those in place, I would like to kind of take a look at a second story, another story. And for a point I will make, London cholera kind of epidemic thing. So let's take a look at the clip first, and then we will have some elaboration. For a point.
In 1854, cholera struck the city of London. Over 600 people died in just a few weeks. People thought that when there were terrible outbreaks of disease, especially cholera, that it was caused by poisonous air. But John Snow, the physician in London, was convinced that cholera in particular was a waterborne disease.
He was an icon of epidemiology. He was against the flow of the times. What was very interesting about John Snow was the deductive reasoning. He was very much a scientist, and he believed in measurement.
As the father of epidemiology, he got on his feet and walked around and started asking, where are these illnesses occurring? So he could see patterns. Epidemiologists essentially look for patterns of disease and then make a prediction of the causes or origins of the outbreak.
And right here was the Broad Street pump. And it turned out that most of the people who had fallen ill and who were continuing to fall ill had drunk water from this particular pump. John Snow is often credited with ending the 1854 epidemic by removing the handle from the contaminated Broad Street pump. The full story is much more interesting.
Okay, so that probably is good enough for our purpose of the discussion. And again, folks, please weigh in to answer that three questions we're looking at from this angle, right? Because the same story, even though it's popular or widely known, we can look at it in different angle. Still the same three story. Did he find the root cause, the true root cause? First. Second, is this the only choice? Is the pump the only choice of the solution? And the third question is, if that's a good choice of solution. Hopefully some folks can weigh in. So that makes this more interesting, right? Otherwise, you'll hear only, my voice, not as please.
Go back to the classic lean answer. It depends, right?
It depends, you're saying? Sorry.
Yeah, that's
okay.
The classic lean answer. It depends.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks, Glenn.
So,
Anyone else want to weigh in, like for those three questions? Did he find the true root cause? If this is the only solution he can choose, or root cause he can choose, if this is a good one.
I don't know much about Cholera, but I don't know how a pump would cause it.
Yeah, I do have a little more in the next slide, and I just want to have those talking
I work for a drug
to
manufacturer.
make people, okay, got it. Anyone else want to jump in a little bit? If no, I will continue in that case. So here's the thing. Definitely, the whole thing, Jon Snow didn't really reach anywhere near to the true root cause, because the cholera, it's discovered like a decade later by an Italian scientist. So it's nowhere near to the true root cause. He doesn't know what happened. He just noticed the pump had something to do with that, and worked on the pump. So if the pump is the only solution, hopefully you do see it. No, you can do many other things. You don't need to, you can put in chemicals or whatever, right? Or move people out or whatever. In the same time, is the pump a good solution? And hopefully we agree by looking at this number. Essentially, Jon Snow was attributed to be the father of modern epidemic, whatever, because of this story, because of this incident. So it's quite effective. The reason I like this story particularly is so visual about the leverage point. The key over here is he did find the leverage point and the handle specifically. So this is the picture of that thing, that memorial. And in the background is the pub. They have a pub, kind of choose as a memorial. The second floor is actually a little museum about him. And this pub over the weekend is packed, and the people float on the street. Really couldn't get in. So you couldn't get a good picture of that museum. So this is like my mecca, because I'm using this story, to address this, and so effective, so relevant. Every time I go to London, I will go find some time, sit in there, have a pint of beer, and just to feel the history essentially. And in the middle of the week, in many cases, the second floor is closed when they don't have that many people. And there was one time the bartender was so nice and opened it up for me to take pictures over there. So without any distraction by other people, whatever. Otherwise, like over the weekend, if they open, the only thing you see is the people over there. But anyway, so the whole point is, this is a very good visualization of the leverage point. So root cause analysis is not necessarily about finding the true root cause. It's really about finding the leverage point to give you high ROI, return on investment. So that's the point of my message. Questions, comments before we wrap up today's discussion? Anyone want to say anything? If no, I will kind of quick summary thing, right? So one thing is cause-effect relationship. It's rooted in the nature of the law or nature of the physics. That relationship, usually we cannot change. But root cause is really about choosing. It's not you choose something to serve that role. It's not something it's just born into to be the root cause. So that's the second message. And the third, to me, root cause analysis with this consideration, the nature of the root cause analysis is really about finding the leverage point for ROI, return on investment. That's the whole point of the discussion. And I do have a couple of slides try to highlight the remaining part that's not intended to be discussed here, but it touched on some of the questions folks had either during here and also in the earlier breakout discussion. So I do have some other discussions, and I just attached a couple of slides in the backup to elaborate on the relationship between troubleshooting and root cause analysis, and also kind of the collection that I see useful for root cause analysis, and the collection of tools especially useful for troubleshooting. So that wrapped up my part of the discussion. Any questions before I hand it back to the section, to Hillary? I probably will stop sharing in this case. Anyone have any? If no, Hillary, back to you then.
Well,
All right.
well, they're not a question, but enjoyed the animations in there, the sound effects and stuff. Pretty cool.
Wonderful. Thanks. Thanks. It's again, my intent is not about like pressing my mind to other people. Rather, I just want to stimulate thinking. And what I notice is if people think in those directions, they will get a much better sense on whatever kind of the direction they want to go. Wonderful. Thanks.
Yep. Are there any more questions before Dr. Jing wraps up his presentation? All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And your presentation was very insightful. I know that I'm going to take snippets from it moving forward in my job. So I hope everyone else does as well.
Wonderful. Really appreciate the opportunity to share the thought and have the discussion.
Thank you. You are more than welcome to stay on with us throughout the remainder of our announcements and program meeting. We have maybe another 5 to 10 minutes before we wrap up entirely. So
yeah, I will hang around. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, this is just a reminder that we do send out meeting evaluation surveys, of which you saw the summary of one earlier on in the slide presentation. Please complete the event satisfaction survey. You'll find a link to it and your electronic RU certificate in the thank you email. It will either be from myself, Hillary Werner, hwerner@memberleader.asq.org, or Daniel Marsh, dmarsh@memberleader.asq.org. Our 2023 program schedule is as follows. We are hoping to include a minimum of 8 hybrid in-person virtual meetings, 2 per quarter with a guest speaker, 4 in-person meetings of some sort, some of them with a hybrid option. This is 1 per quarter, 1 tour of a company, a winery or brewery in person only. And we are considering other networking events as well now. So please be on the lookout for those invitations. And then we have 1 annual holiday networking event, which will take place in December in lieu of a regular program meeting. And coming up August 11th, something to look forward to, we have root cause analysis and troubleshooting by Anshuman Tiwari, head of transformation DXC India, pardon me. And then
are you sure that's correct, Hillary? I don't, I think that was last August.
Oh, was it? Did I look at the wrong? Oh, my apologies. Well, be on the lookout in my ASQ for the upcoming presentation. It's very possible I looked at the wrong thing in our files. So my apologies.
I think our speaker next month is Dawn Ringrose, and the topic will be on strategy and organizational excellence.
Okay, perfect. So look forward to Dawn Ringrose. Again, my apologies. I must have been looking in the wrong area. And then our next in-person hybrid meeting will take place at Rio Salado College on the Tempe campus on September 14th. So keep that in mind as you're planning ahead with your member meetings, that we will have an in-person option in September. If you are connected on social media, please find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. We do have accounts for all of those different options, and we hope to find you on our sites. Are there any final thoughts, comments, or questions prior to the close of this meeting?
Hillary, would you like me to launch your poll?
Sure, that would be
put together?
great. Yep, I did put together a poll that I mentioned earlier about potential opportunities for upcoming networking events. If we can get the poll launched, what I'd like you to do is go and select all options that apply to you that would be interesting, essentially.
I believe the poll is now up.
Okay. I am not seeing it. Does anyone else see the poll?
Fuck in your face. Yeah, it's there.
Oh, can you see it, Glenn?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay. Okay, good. Maybe it's just me that can't see it for whatever reason. Maybe it's disabled on my end. I've been having those issues all night.
It's there. I don't know, everybody else's mute buttons must be freaking broke.
And again, you can select all the options, none of the options, one of the options, however many you feel would be fun to attend.
I think we have 9 people responding so far.
Okay.
10.
Just remember, the more input we have from you, the better we are able to serve you and provide the best options for networking. So your feedback is very much appreciated.
We have 11 responses so far. The top 2 are either the discounted group Diamondback tickets or the wine tasting event.
Okay. Perfect. All right. We will definitely keep those in mind, and you guys are free to continue entering your responses in the poll after I close up the meeting. But I just want to say a final thank you for attending the meeting tonight, and a final thank you to Dr. Jing. We really appreciate you joining us on the call this evening. Your presentation was extremely beneficial and very insightful. So thank you very much. Until we meet again, please stay safe and stay healthy. And we look forward to seeing everybody next month. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.